So b'shus the Rosh Koilel Yedid Nafshi, Haniftem Achaveroi El Yeputem Amene Ele Metorch Dvar Alocha. I arrived yesterday morning in Detroit, and we had many shiurim and many sessions with Rabbonim and with Balabatim. I never count how many shiurim I give, but as I moved into this room, I was surprised and I was taken aback because I thought this is a little koilel, and I see this looks like a real koilel in Yerushalayim Ira Kodesh. So, I have a dilemma. Originally, I wanted to talk about the Yesodus of Taroivis and Blia, and then I was asked to talk about the re-milk, this new milk that is produced, and is it melech or not? And as I walk into the goel, I regret what I planned to say. So I will try to talk about two topics. And when I have so little time to say so much, I just try to talk faster. I usually don't talk fast, but I will try. So first of all, regarding what I was asked to speak about. So in the past few years, we've been dealing with cultured meat and new technological advances. We are living in a changing world in so many different fields, in medicine, in Kashrus, and in producing meat. Meat is no longer what we thought it was for thousands of years. And milk is no longer what we thought it was for thousands of years. Meat once come, you slaughtered an animal and you had meat. You milked a cow when you had milk. So we're living in a changing world, and how do we deal with halacha in this new world? So Minchas Osher Shar Tshuvas Chelik Daled. There are 6 tshuvas from Ayin Daled to Ayin Tes. Don't look for it because it's not printed yet. It should be printed, I hope, in a month's time. We've been waiting for a very long time. So there's 6 tshuvas about cultured meat. And from the first moment, I said, meat is meat, and it's fleischig, and you could only take cells from a kosher shechted animal. Unlike what many Rabbonim wrote. And cultured meat is made of microscopic stem cells, but it is taken from an animal. Its origin is meat cells, and it is meat. It has the mirkam, I don't know what mirkam is in English. Texture? The texture, and not only the texture, if you examine it under a microscope or chemically, it is meat. And meat is meat no matter where it comes from. And I quoted 2 Poshet Gemoras, one in Menochas Amachtes, one in Sanhedrin Daf Nun Tes. Menochas Amachtes is an aboya. Chitin sheyordu ba'ovim, ma hem lemenochos. So grain that came out of the clouds, is it kosher lemenochos or not? And there's a machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. What is chitin sheyordu ba'ovim? Rashi says they were soaked up by evaporation, and grain went into the clouds, and then it came down. And Tosfos disagrees. As much as we know about science today, there is no such a thing. Only water evaporates. Fluid turns into gas, and it turns back into fluid, and that is how clouds form. But there is no such a thing that substance or grain goes up to the clouds. But that is Perush Rashi. Tosfos says, B'derech nes. It was miraculous, and chitin came out of the heavens, and they never were gedulei karka. And what is the shaila in the Gemara? Mekol Moshe Voiseichem. Is that considered Mekol Moshe Voiseichem? But according to Tosfos, why is it chito? It didn't grow. It's not gedulei karka. It's miraculous chito, but chito is chito. So there's a saying. It's a childish saying, but l'tzorech hadvorim l'sabbat is always, and we use everything we have. So people say, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it looks like a duck, it's a duck. If it has the texture of chito, it tastes like chito, it looks like chito, then it's chito. Even if it came out of the clouds, b'derech neis, k'shittas hatoises. And then there's a Gemara in Sanhedrin Nun Tes. The Gemara tells about Reb Shimon ben Yotzadok, who was walking on his way probably to the Beis HaMedrash, and he was attacked by lions. And suddenly, to Atma, the Bisek, 2 big pieces of meat came falling down from the heavens, and the lions ate the meat, and they left him at peace. And then the leftovers he brought to the Beis HaMedrash. A Yid always lives with halacha. So this is an unbelievable story. B'derech nes, meat fell from the skies to save him. But what does a Talmud Chacham do with his leftover meat? Halacha, medaf learn, and he brings it to Koilel, and he asks, is this mutar b'achila or also b'achila? And they said, well, this is meat. Was it shechted? Is it kosher meat or not? Ein dover tomei yored min hashamayim, mutar b'achila. And then he asks, if you assume ein dover tomei yored min hashamayim, chamor sheyored min hashamayim, is it mutar b'achila or not? We see it's a donkey. Is it mutar b'achila? Well, it's a chaya tumeya. But ein dover tomei yored min hashamayim. So this is the discussion in Sanhedrin Daf Nun Tes. But why would that be considered meat? I mean, it doesn't come from a live animal. It doesn't come out of the priyarvia. It's meat that fell out of the sky. So I say, meat is meat, and chito is chito, even though it wasn't b'chlal b'derech hateva. But it's meat. You can't deny the fact that it's meat, and you can't deny the fact that it's chito. And therefore, cultured meat is meat. And it's fleishig, and it comes from an animal. It needs to come from a kosher animal and a shechted animal, and that was my opinion. And things have changed. While when I first wrote the tshuva about 7 years ago, they really thought they could produce meat, and they were unsuccessful. And the end product is 80%, which is called scaffold. The scaffold is 80% or 90% vegetable, and only a small percentage is meat. But even so, it doesn't really taste like meat. They give artificial flavoring. It smells like meat, and I still said it's fleishig. It's not the bottle, because it's Yosef Mishishim, the meat product, the end product, not the original cells, and I paskin it's meat. And this entire discussion and the way it developed is in Minchas Osher Chelik Dalet from Ayin Dalet to Ayin Tes. And now there's this new milk product, which tastes like milk, looks like milk. Would we say the same? Is it melechig or not? And here, my opinion right now is that it is not melechig. So there is a company, Remilk, and they were successful in producing whey. They don't make milk. They make whey. And the whey has no connection with milk. It is not made out of milk cells. They were successful in producing a yeast, and yeast is a fungi. And another company, which is Gad Dairy, buys their whey, and they use it with other components to produce what is very, very similar to milk. So let me explain what milk is. Milk is 87% water. Not water, tap water that we mix into the milk, but natural water. When you milk a cow, milk is 87% water, 3.5% fat. Lactose is a type of sugar, once again, not sugar that they mix in the dairy farm, but natural sugar, which is lactose. Minerals like calcium, we all know that milk has calcium, is about 1%. Protein is 3.7%. There are different proteins. Whey is 20% of the protein, which means whey is 0.7% of milk. And that is the product that the company was successful in producing in an artificial way. No milk cells at all, but they produce whey. And this whey is used, and company number 2 takes water, takes sugar instead of lactose, which is the natural sugar. Instead of natural fat that we find in milk, they use coconut oil. So they use different products to copy milk. The only product that is really a milk-like product is whey that's less than 1% of the milk. So this new product, more than soy milk, almond milk, coconut, or more than any other product, is, some say, exactly like milk. And the taste, you would not differentiate. But nevertheless, because there is no part of this product that comes from a cow, not one part of this new product that is really milk, and it comes from milk, I think this is not Halachic. And this is no different than soy milk or any other milk, substitute. I think there's a better word for it, but it is no different than any other. And therefore, I think this product would not be Halachic. Even if it would have the texture of milk, there would be a room to be machalik between basar and chalav. And that is because the Gemara in Chulin Kufyud Gimel Omid Beis Lo Yisavashel Gedi Bechalev Imoi, and Chazal are mamayit from Chalev Imoi 4 or 5 different types of milk. Chalav Tameya, there is no Isser of basar b'chalav. Chalav Zochar, there is no Isser of basar b'chalav. Chalav Isha, Menatoira, there is no Isser basar b'chalav. So these 3 types of chalav are not the same as chalav behemet tahira. It should be no chiddush that it's mutar. Gid Anosha is only Isser from a behemet tahira and not a behemet tameya. But another halacha that we learn from Chalav Imai is chalav shchuta. Chalav that was found in the body of a cow, which was not milk when the cow, it was not milked when the cow was alive, and the chalav comes out of, my English is not that good. How is the organ which we milk in our cow called? The udder. U-D-D-E-R, right? It is chalav that's found in the udder, but it wasn't milked during the cow's lifetime, and that is mutar. So it's exactly the same milk. V'yafal piken, it's mutar because it's not chalev imoi. And l'cha'ira, this type of milk, even if we would argue and compare this milk to cultured meat according to the Mincha Social, which is fleshig, and we would say, looks like milk, tastes like milk, you examine its chemical component, and you might assume it's milk, but it's no different than cholav shchuta. It was never in an udder, so there should be no isser. However, there's an isser derabanan, and this touches upon a yesoid b'darakei apsak. Masha asu chachamim asu chachamim. Chachamim didn't have this in mind, and it's not cholav shchuta. It would be like cholav shchuta lekula, but it wouldn't be like cholav shchuta lechumra to say there's an isser derabanan. We don't expand the surim derabanan. Masha asru asru, masha loy asru loy asru, because this was not even conceivable in their days. Would we say there's an Isser Derabanan like Cholav Shchuta that's Isser Derabanan? I think no. But this entire discussion is only relevant if we assume that it would be Melachik Mitzad Etzem. But I think it's not Melachik Mitzad Etzem because it has never had any kesher with Chalav. And the basic component, which is whey, is produced in a totally new method, and it's not cells of milk and has nothing to do with milk. And if we could produce milk in a totally artificial way, unlike the cultured meat, which originates from meat cells, then that would not be considered cholav. And the question would be, is it similar to cholav shchuta would be an Isser Derabanan? And I say, B'Isur Derabanan, Masha lo asru, lo asru. But if I am right that it's not milk at all, then it wouldn't be even a question about the Isser Derabanan, because cholav shchuta is milk. And it's the same milk as any other milk. But it wasn't milk when the animal was alive. Rashi and the Rashba have 2 different signoines. Cholav shchuta Chulin daf kuftes. I think it's twice. Kuftes or not kuftes. Rashi writes, Cholav shchuta, lav cholav hu. That's an interesting hagdara. It's milk. It's the same milk. If we would wait another day and milk this cow during your lifetime, that would be the real cholav and the isabos of a cholav. But Rashi writes, lav cholav hu. And the question is, does Rashi mean it's not cholav or it's ein ze cholav she'asra Torah? Mishmeres abayis. And if you learn Yeridea, you're familiar with this amazing polmus between the Rashba and the Ra'ah. And I think we have nothing similar in the Toldos of Gedolei HaPoskim. It's a three-way. So the Rashba wrote the Torah Abayis, comes along the Ra'ah, and he checks the house that the Rashba built, and he finds a lot of flaws in that house. And he writes the Bedek Abayis. And the Rashba was still around when the Ra'ah wrote the Bedek Abayis, and he writes the Mishmeres Abayis, and he says, you're wrong with all the problems you find in my house. And the Mishmeres Abayis, Bayis Dalid, Sha'ar Aleph, the Lashon of the Rashba is, Cholavu, Elosha Loi Osra Soy Torah. But I don't think necessarily there's a Machlokes Rashi in the Rashba. It's a Mashmos Dorsh and Ika Benayu. Rashi writes, Lav Cholavu. But probably the way we need to understand Rashi is, it's a cholav shaloi aseh Torah. Lav cholavu regarding loisa mashal gedi bechalei v'imoi. But regardless how we define cholav shchuto, I think this artificial milk is not cholav under any way, because it does not come from cells. It is totally an artificial product. If we say it would be cholav, it would be like cholav shchuto. And then the question would be, would it be an issur d'Rabbanan? And maybe that would depend on Rashi Rashba. But generally speaking, I think by isurim d'Rabbanan, we cannot be marachev isurim d'Rabbanan. There are areas in which Chachamim gave a klal and not protim. So one of the questions I've been constantly asked in Chutz La'aretz is, scooters on Shabbos. And I hear there are various communities in America which people come to shul on scooters on Shabbos. So more than 100 years ago, when bicycles were a huge technological breakthrough. So how technology has changed. 100 years ago, that was a new technology, and people were amazed, bicycles. When we spoke about technology today, we are far from that stage. So the Ben Ish Chai writes, you could drive a bicycle on Shabbos. Uvdin the Choyel, and he says, but all the others say no. The Chazal didn't answer something specific. If they answered Uvdin the Choyel, the very Hagdara of Uvdin the Choyel is relative. It depends in the norms of different society and a changing world. And we don't say those 2 or 3 sources that we find the Gemara Uvdin the Choyel ein lahoisef alein. The same question we have by Moilid. So Rashi and Beitzer writes, Moilid of a Chodesh, Kuravhu, it's Korav Lasiyas Malacha. In Shas, we find Moilid only in 2 sources. Only in Shabbos and in Beitzer, ice, crushing ice and turning ice into water, and Moilid Reach Bebeged. Those are the 2 sugyas of Moilid. But still we say Moilid is a general concept, and Moilid could mean many other things, and the same as Uvdin the Choyel. But when Chazal asked something specific, Ein Nadamis Milsa la Milsa, Masha Osru Osa, Masha Lo Osru Osa. As Chazal answered Cholev Tomeya and Cholev Shchuto, we don't say if they would have this product in their days, they probably would answer, but they didn't, and they didn't answer, and that is why it's mutar. So because I decided to talk fast, I hope I'm making myself clear. So when Chazal answers something general and not something specific, Chazal answers an idea, then we say, Vaday sheyesh lo'isav olav. And that is relevant, l'moshel, in 2 areas, many others, but I bring these 2 areas. Uvdin the Choyel. When Chazal answered Uvdin the Choyel, they didn't answer one gevissa maisa. They answered Uvdin the Choyel. When Chazal answered the Moilid, they asked producing something new. And that is why the Beis Yitzchok and the Masham 150 years ago assumed that closing an electrical circuit would be moiled. You're bringing an amazing energy which gives heat, which gives light, and that is moiled, even though Chazal didn't ask electricity. So in some areas, we say Chazal asked a concept, an idea, and of course we need to adapt that concept and that idea lefi hazman. Ein adover kain lagabe cholav shchuto. When Chazal asks a certain product, a certain thing, we do not say ledamois melsa la melsa. Maybe if they would have this product, they would answer, but they didn't. Ve'ein lahoisef al divrei chachomim. So for all these reasons, I think that this product would not be melachig, even though I wrote at great length that the cultured meat is a fleishige product. So this is one shiur, and I have about 15, 20 minutes, and now I just want to share with you some very important yesoides and dina teruvis and in Bliyos. But this is going to be brief. And I think this is also going to be a minchas shacheli de balad, but I'm not sure. So when I learned teruvis and bosa b'cholav, there are many sugyas that are somewhat troubling, especially iloa gavar or tetor gavar. And we pass into Torah, and that's a machloikas ameroim. So the Noida B'Yehuda is the first, or Shulchan may be the last, and many Gedolim say, so why don't we check this out? Why can't we finally decide whether we love a girl or Torah? So the Noida B'Yehuda writes, and the Prima Godim writes the same. It's not definitive. There are exceptions. Sometimes iloa, sometimes tatoy, and therefore checking it out would not solve the dilemma. And I ask, there are exceptions, but in statistics, we could be quite accurate. So I asked the Noida B'Yehuda and the Prima Godim, we're not going to check it out once. We're going to check it out 100 times, 200 times. And if we find 150 out of the two, or 180 or 190 after the 200, then we could decide whether a loa gover or a tatua gover. We have the same dilemma regarding ein begidin benoisen tam. Teferes Yonason, and I think Simon Kufalef and Taruvis and many others say tam kolush. It's the Rashba. The Rashba Chulin Daf Sadik Weiss. So the Rashba writes, Yesh begin benoisen tam, ein begin benoisen tam. Why not a kfela? Why not take a kfela and let him decide? So the Rashba says there is a tam kolush. And the machloikas is whether the tam kolush yesh boi kedei lesoyer tarivis. And in Minchas Shachel Gimel in the Chuvis, there's kama v'kama makoides when we find the concept of a tam kolush. Not bar not, noisen tam bar noisen tam. We are machalik between not bar not the hetere and not bar not the yisuris. So obviously there is some tam, but it is not enough to aser a teroivis. So tam kolish is a big sugya in dine Bliyos. But ilogov et etogov is more complicated because it's mamish astira gemira between two opinions, either ilogov or tetogov. And then the Aruch has a comment which you wonder why nobody spoke about this before him. And he says it also depends on quantity. Would we say that one drop ilua would cook a big tatua, or the other way around? L'choyre the machlokes eloa gor and tatua gor is if 50% is eloa and 50% is tatua. But wouldn't it depend on quantity? And he quotes a Tosis in Masechet Shabbos that if you pour a little water, hot water, into an ambatya, which is a lot of cold water, there is no mevashel, because the hot water immediately is cooled off because of kamos, because of quantity. But nobody says this before the Aruch HaShulchan, and how could it be from the Gemara? Till the Aruch HaShulchan, nobody thought about this, that Elogov and Tatogov would depend on how much it is. Yesod HaDevorim, which I want to say, and it'll sound like a big chiddush, but I think it gives so much or in the entire realm of Bliyos Bekelim and Bliyos Ba'oichlin. This entire area is very ambiguous. So we know there's Bittul B'Shishim, but in the Gemara and Bavli and Yerushalmi, there's one opinion: Bittul B'Shloishim, Bittul Abon, Bittul B'Shishim, Bittul Memeya. And we pass him Bittul B'Shishim. How could there be such a huge spectrum in the Machlokes in the Gemara Amiron, where the Rav Macholim are Bittul B'Shloishim or B'Meya, and we pass him somewhere in the middle, Bittul B'Shishim. So anybody familiar with my Torah, and a Minchas Osher somewhere in Chumash Devorim, I wrote an entire siman about this. I don't remember which siman, and I always apologize to my Talmidim. I don't remember the Minchas Osher well. Many other Svom I remember better for a simple reason, because the Minchas Osher to me is not Gersa de Yankusa. When I was young, the Sefer wasn't around. So I don't remember the Simonim. But in Chumash Devorim, there's a siman which is Nimsar Adover Lechachom. The concept of Nimsar Adover Lechachom is very limited. Mitzad echad kol haTorah kula Nimsar Adover Lechachomim, and we don't understand one out of the Tariq Mitzvahs Elo Lefi Divrei Chazal, and that is why Torah Shebal Peh to us is fundamental, like Torah Shebechsav. The entire world quotes Rabbeinu Sadia going, Ein Uma Seinu Uma Elo B'Teirosa. That is not an exact quote. Rabbeinu Sadia going writes, Ein Uma Seinu Uma Elo B'Teiroseho. Loshen Rabim, and I think its kavana is Torah Shebechsav and Torah Shebal Peh. So there's not one mitzvah that we will understand from the Chumash. The Kol Torah Kula Nimsa Lechachomim Lefarish. But there are only very few cases in which the Chachamim are not only parshonim, but mechoikikim. And sometimes the Chachamim are not commentators, but legislators. What do I mean to say? Nimsat Devar Chacham is only found twice in Shas. Chagigi Yudches and B'choris Chovav. Chagigi Yudches is Chalamoyed. Meleches Chalamoyed is Nimsa Lechacham. B'choris Chovav is a different sugya we won't discuss today. Meleches Chalamoyed is also in a Torah Madarabonon. Chagi Yudches are droshes. Pashtas Gemara Mashmos in a Torah. But the Rishonim ask, if it's Otam in a Torah, how could be there a heter of Dover Ovid? There's no such a thing that an Issa Torah is mutter for monetary loss. There's no such a thing. The only thing that's matter Issa Diurais is Pikuach Nefesh. Nothing else is matter and Issa Diurais. So how could we be maker of Dover Ovid if Malach is Chalamoyed in a Torah? Kosav B'S Yosef. That's a B'S Yosef. And the B'S Yosef says, Meleches Chalamoyed is also in a Torah. But Meleches Chalamoyed nimsa hadavar lechachamim. What does that mean? Whenever the Torah says a klal that behechreach yesh baprotim, ein beklal ela ma shebeprat, and the klal has no meaning if you don't know what are the protim. So by Shabbos, the Torah asks a malacha. How do we know what's a malacha? Malachas HaMishkan, Iskeshu Malachas Shabbos, na Malachas HaMishkan. So we know what's a malacha. Torah asked malacha Chalamoyed, but what's a malacha? Chalamoyed has nothing to do with Malachas Shabbos v'Yom Tov. Has nothing to do with Malachas HaMishkan. So the Torah asks a malacha, what's a malacha? Nimsa Adov L'Chachamim. And Kishenimsa Adov L'Chachamim, Lekvoya Protim Shebeklal, Chachamim are mechoikikim. And it is as if HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells the Chachamim, Ani va'atem netayel began Eden. Ani va'atem nimsar Torah li Yisrael. And Torah says to the Chachamim, and that's not Chacham Shebekol Dovedot, that's Chachmei Talmud, HaMishnah v'Gemara. The Gemara is Sof Hera. The Gemara is Sof, the Yesod of Torah Shebal Peh. So if Chachamim determine what is a malacha, Chachamim have the authority to say we are matter lefi me'ois einenu and we're matter adover ovid. Example number 2 is Hodor bedaled minim. Lulav yavesh posel. Hayu morishim lulavayim libneihem. Ein mevi'in raya mishas adchak. It was a sakona. And the Rosh brings Shittas Aravit. B'shas adchak, you could make a bracha on a lulav vayavesh. Unprecedented. But kol Torah kol Chacham pasel what the Torah is machshir. Nowhere are the Chacham machshir what the Torah pasels. If a lulav vayavesh is pasel man a Torah, how could you say a bracha b'shas adchak? The Chacham are machshir what is pasel man a Torah. But kol Torah kol Chacham asus yog Torah. Something is kosher man a Torah, Chacham mased. Just a moment ago, we spoke about cholav shchuta, but bosa b'cholav. Man a Torah muter, Chacham maso. Kosev Arash, nimsaadavar Chachamim. Torah says Hodor. How would we know what Hodor means? Hodor is different in the eyes of every person. And the Torah says you need Piyat Hodor. Torah doesn't say, what's Hodor? How would we know? Nimsa adavar Chachamim. Because nimsa adavar b'yodam, there are machoikikim, not parshonim. And I brought another few examples. When we say nimsa adover chachomim v'divrei chachomim gegufan shel Torah. And this is where I come to the entire realm of Bliyos Isur. Boror keshemesh, that miot could give a tam beroiv. That's a fact. And that is what Chachamim were koiveya. When there's a bishul of macholas asuris together with macholas mutoros, there's a concept of bliya. And menatoira tam keikar. So the fundamental idea is tam iser oiser es a heter. How much? Torah teaches us tam keikar. Nothing more than that. The Torah also teaches us another halacha of bittul baroif. Achrei rabem lahatis. How do we balance out these two yesoides in halacha? Nimsa hadover lechachomim. And because it is impossible to be korveya with any level of certainty when there is tam and when there's not tam, depends in the macholim. What type of machal? Tavlin afilu b'yelef loy bottle. But between cucumbers and tavlin, a lot of things in the middle. Some macholas have a more powerful and intense tam, some have less. And anybody that learned Hilchos Taruvis knows not always is a machal poilet meloi koichoi. Not always is a kli boilea maloi koichoi. Fascinating machloikis between the Chavis Das and a Borach Falenka. I think it's in Kuv Gimel. Some of the makoyis might not be accurate because, as I said before, I wasn't planning on saying this shul because I was asked to speak about the other sugya about cholov. So maybe some of the makoyis need to be checked. Fascinating machloikis. And Issa was nizbashal in a pot with, it was echod ma'arboim keneged heter. We took the Issa out, it was nizbashal in another pot, echod ma'arboim. Or even echod b'shloishim. And then we took it out and was nizbashal in another pot, echod ma'arboim. Memoneshach two are muter and only one is also. Because it could only be poilet shishim. Two are already shmoinim. So memoneshach only one pot could be also po. So we have two heter, keneged one issa. We don't know which one. Why isn't it bottle barav? And we should be matter all three pots. Because the issa could asa ad echad b'shishim. Two pots are already echad mishmoinim. so it cannot answer more than one. We answer all three pots because we don't know in which pot it was pilot. Because the klal is, how would we know? Not always was it pilot. It also depends how long it's nisbashel. Yeah? If it's nisbashel and we turned off the gas the moment the bishul started, probably there's less bliya. But no posek could determine, does it depend how long this was nisbashel? You make a chunt, the longer it's on the stove, the more it disintegrates. So there's more plita, depends how long it's nisbashel. So the Chavez Das says, Issa can't be pilot yoisem echad b'shishim b'pamachas. But it could be pilot keneged shishim once and twice and 3 and 10 times. And Rabbi Frankel asks, doesn't make sense. So maybe in the same bishir it was pilot and choizev a pilot v'choizev a pilot. What's the difference whether it's one pot or 2 pots or 3 pots? And if you say it could be pilot every time, echad mishishim, again and again and again, so if it was cooked 5 minutes once, 5 minutes twice, 5 minutes 3 times, it could be pilot and answer all the 3. And if you cooked it an hour in one pot, how do you know it wasn't pilot v'choizev a pilot v'choizev a pilot? So this is a real dilemma. Nera la'aniyas daiti. And this is the asad I want to say. Nimsa adov alachachomim. And because it is impossible to determine with any level of certainty. Was it pilot? How much it was pilot? How long was it cooked? And what type of food? Some foods would aser only echad be'eser. Some echad mishivim. And lav dafke tavlin de la tam avidu, which is afero elef loy bottle. Sometimes ilogov, sometimes tadogov. It depends on quantities as well, like the Hiyoំהשחור says. And therefore, nimsar adov alachachomim v'divrayim k'divrei Torah mamish. And chachomim were kaveya masmeiros. It's arbitrary. Yes. And that is why it's a machlokes. Do we rely on a kveila only if there's shishim? Or even if there's pochas mishishim? And when did chachomim say kveila? When there is no shishim? When there is shishim? If it's yoisem mishishim? And this entire mareches of tam ke'ikar is nimsar l'chachamim. And therefore it is no longer relevant. Ilo agover, teto agover is a machlokes b'derech klal. But chachamim were aware. And we cannot talk about quantities. Ein biyodenu l'kvoa. Exactly how much would be the iloah and how much would be the tetoah. And therefore, Chachamim were kaveya mesmeres, bishrirutiyut. So look it up in Google what shriruti means in English. I think it's arbitrary. It's not bediktuk. It cannot be bediktuk. Every machal is different. It depends how long it was cooked. The longer it's cooked, there is more plita. And Rabbi Frankel is right. If a machal can't ask a yoshim mishishim, it can't ask a yoshim mishishim not the second time, not the 10th time, not the first time. Why would it make a difference? But chachamim were geyser, and shishim eraser. And chachamim were mechalek. Was it cooked once before? If there are 3 kalim, one would be bottle and the others no. Divrei chachamim kedivrei Torah damyan. In the entire area of tam ke'ikar and bliya, and plita bekalim u'ba'oichlin. And this will explain many, many sugyas in Bosa B'cholev and in Teroivis. Yes. Which sites are you quoting? In Chulin? Yeah. Asmachor kru means roya b'sheila, and I'm just explaining. Asmachor kru is roya b'sheila, and the Gemara says, how much is this roya keneged habehema? So I think Kabbalah b'Osebiyodam is what I say. Chachamim were kaveya, and that is Kabbalah. Maybe usually Kabbalah b'Osebiyodam sometimes means halacha l'Moshe Messinai. I don't think here it means halacha l'Moshe Messinai. But even if it does, I would be mitzamtzim Shishim v'meya. But we discussed far more questions than Shishim v'meya. To me, Shishim v'meya is only one of the questions, and primarily this mahalach came to my mind be'ikah when I learned the suga of Iloh and the Torah. And the Noidi B'Yehuda and the Prima Godam and the Yocha Shulchan all struggle with Iloh and Torah, but I think it is much broader than Iloh Gova and Torah Gova. Hafoichbo v'hafoichbo, it's a Yesoid Godel, and Choshev HaKoil of Talmid Chum. If you have any ha'ores, livenus or lister, let me know. You could write to me, and just write that it's from the Koilel Issa Veheta in Detroit. So I'm going to be leaving town soon. It was a big schus to be Marbitz Torah in the Koilelim. Whenever I visit the community, I always make a point, if I can, to speak to the Koilel, because the Koilel is the neshama of every Kehillah B'Yisrael, of every community in Beis Yisrael, is the Amela Torah. That is the soul and the spirit of every Yiddish Kehillah. And that is what gives life to Klal Yisrael. Amela Torah, Avrechem that dedicate days and nights, the Omala Torah, the Shashua Shal Torah, and Yirotzen, Miyitin, and Abayis Agodlas, we should have Moira Robi Yisrael, and my Beitze Torah be Yisrael, and you should be Zoicha lahagdil Torah ulahadira.